Hello everyone, this is Beastly EO with another video. And on this video we're going to be talking about What If. Now What If was a comic book series that Marvel did, kind of like what would happen if, but most notably now is there's going to be a TV show, specifically an animated show on Disney Plus called What If. So I thought this would be a great time to talk about the what ifs that I want to see. So unfortunately, there were some that I wanted to talk about but are already confirmed in the show, so I can't really talk about those. Specifically, Marvel Zombies. What would happen if... what would happen if Peggy got the formula super soldier serum instead of Steve Rogers? What would happen if... Actually, I think those were the only ones for sure I thought about. And the rest I definitely would not have thought of on my own, like T'Challa becoming Star-Lord, Vision removing his Mind Stone because he doesn't need it anymore, an evil Doctor Strange, Killmonger saving Tony Stark so the terrorists don't take him. Yeah, those ones I wouldn't have thought of. So they're not on the list. So the ones I'm going to be talking about are ones that we could be on the list, could be talked about, but have not been confirmed. So one of the first ones I want to talk about is if mutants existed in the MCU from the beginning. Meaning from the very first Marvel movie, what would happen if the mutant gene existed. And I think it would have been kind of a disaster. I think Civil War would have been pushed up a lot earlier. I think New York wouldn't have been as destroyed. I don't want to say that. I don't think the Battle of New York would have taken as long. Ultron would have been easier to defeat. I think... the Civil War would have been much different. It would have caused a lot more problems. Would have definitely killed a bunch of people on both sides. I'm trying to think of what else. And for Endgame, I don't think there would have been much different. Infinity War might have been a little bit different based on where the stones were, but even then, I can't imagine it being too much different from what happened. I mean, just be more characters involved. Which therefore would mean more destruction. Also, the potential that Thanos wouldn't have been able to snap, I think, would have been in Infinity War. There's the potential that he would not have been able to snap because of the sheer power of all the mutants on Earth. It's a potential. Just thoughts on that. Another what if I'd like to talk about is what if Baku beat T'Challa in their first battle for being Black Panther. So I thought about this one because I thought it'd be the most interesting because it would be so different to see that happen. And I think it would have changed several things. It would have changed Black Panther, obviously. Killmonger would not have been as big of an issue, as big of a threat, because so this is tough. So I feel like if he would have won, T'Challa would have been T'Challa would have been exiled. He would have gotten the Black Panther ability. Killmonger would have come to take the throne, or try to. I don't know if Baku would have actually gone with the ritual. There's potential. There is potential that it would have happened. And if so, Baku would have died. And the reason why I would have said that is because the reason why T'Challa lived was because Baku and his group, his tribe, weren't at the fight, which meant they were there to find his body before he froze to death. Baku would not have been as lucky because his crew would have been with him there. So he would have fallen and nobody would have gotten him, and I think he would have died, and Killmonger would have stayed Black Panther. Um, yeah, I don't. And then so then, with Killmonger being in charge, Winter Soldier would still be a threat because he wouldn't have helped him out. There would also been a war, um, Wakanda versus the rest of the world. Infinity War would have been completely different because they wouldn't have allowed the group to come there. And Wakanda, I don't think would have fought. I really don't. I don't think so. I don't think they would have, which would have changed Endgame, obviously, if it would have even happened. So yeah, that was different in my head than I thought, but still interesting. The other one is, what would happen if Quicksilver didn't die? What would have happened if Pedro didn't die? And I think the big thing that would have changed was, they still would have. So her and Pedro would have joined the Avengers, but she would have been a lot less depressed. Meaning, she wouldn't have fallen for Vision because she didn't need him. She would have had her brother by her side. They still would have fought. So in the Civil War, I think they both would have been on Captain America's side. They would have won because of their abilities. I'm trying to think of what else would have been different. They definitely, I think they would have, I think for the most part it would have stayed the same, but WandaVision would never existed, meaning the show would never existed. So I don't also, Scarlet, she wouldn't have become the Scarlet Witch. She wouldn't have become as powerful because she wouldn't have thought her power was just her power, not magic. Yeah, I'm definitely going to go with that one. And then, what would have happened if Thanos tried to look for the Infinity Stones much earlier? So my thought process on this one was, let's say the 80s. And the reason why I bring that up is because we would have had a much different group of Avengers. We would have had potentially Agent Carter as either Captain Carter or just Agent Carter, with or without the super soldier serum. We would have had Howard Stark potentially making a makeshift Iron Man suit or weapons in general to take out Thanos. We would have had a very basic shield. We would have had Ant-Man. We would have had the Wasp, but they would have been Hank Pym and his wife. We would have also had Goliath, who was the giant man, and we would have had the Ancient One, I believe, and I think we would have had Odin, and the potential of Yondu. The reason why I say the potential of Yondu is because he was around that time picking up Peter Quill. So I definitely think there was the potential of him being a part of it and trying to take out Thanos. And I think they would have been successful because when he would have gone to Earth, he would have had none of the stones, I don't think. Potentially none of the stones. And because of that, he would have been significantly weaker. Granted, his army would still have been powerful. But even then, I think they would have been able to take him out. But again, that's just something I would have thought of, which would have meant it changed the entire MCU completely because they would have been the heroes right from the get-go and everyone would have known who they were. So yeah, definitely would have changed a lot of things in that. But definitely would have been interesting to see what would happen on that one. And then, I got to talk about the six what ifs that we still don't know about. So when the Avengers went back in time, there are 7 timelines that were created, potentially. One we know for a fact was created because they made a whole show out of it called Loki. So that one we're skipping. But there were 6 others that were created. So what would have happened after Black Widow jumped to her death and Hawkeye got the Soul Stone. Well, we know Red Skull would have potentially been freed and not quite sure what would have happened to him. Would he have died? Would he have not known what to do? Would he have gone back to Earth to regroup to join Hydra? Potentially, all potential. But not quite sure what would happen. Meaning, I think the only thing that would have happened in that one is that he would have gone back to Earth and tried to recreate Hydra and try to take over the world again. So that's the Soul Stone. So the Power Stone. The Power Stone was taken before Peter Quill got it. So because he would have gotten it, they would have gotten it before Peter Quill received it. He would not have been arrested. He would not have met the Guardians of the Galaxy, and they would have never teamed up. And so the potential of that would be that he would have allowed Nova Corps to actually get obliterated by Ronan much sooner than they would have anticipated. Also, Ronan would have tried to overthrow Thanos because he would have had the Power Stone, corrupt with power, and try to kill Thanos. I think he would have failed, and everything would have gone similar after that. But it's tough to say because that Power Stone does make him very powerful. So it'd be interesting to see what would happen. That's where I think would be the huge difference in the beginning of the Power Stone. So those two are out of the way. The next is the Reality Stone. So the Reality Stone would have been changed a lot of things on Asgard because that was their bargaining chip for the Dark Elves to kind of convince them to basically get killed. But at the same time, when you think about it, it would have been beneficial because Jane Foster would have been safe. The Dark Elves wouldn't have been able to become as powerful, and there's the potential that he would have been able to kill the Dark Elves without it. So with him killing them, there's the chance that his mother would not have been killed. So his mother would still be alive. Loki wouldn't have really joined their side because they wouldn't have needed him. So Loki wouldn't have been an ally. He would still be an enemy, and he'd still be locked up. And then Ragnarok wouldn't have happened because Odin wouldn't have died because he got sent to Earth. And Loki would still be in prison, and so Loki would not have sacrificed himself and actually joined his brother in helping out and actually become family. That's a little depressing. Yeah, that one's a little sadder than I wanted it to be because I liked Loki. But that also would have meant that Thor would not have been... Thor would have been reprimanded for doing what he did by his father, which would have caused a whole bunch of other problems. Oh, so yeah, so a lot of things would have changed. Definitely Thor 3 would have been completely different. And potentially Infinity War because of the Reality Stone, obviously. But yeah, so that's one. That's another one. So that's 3 of the stones down. All right, let's talk about the Mind Stone. So the Mind Stone being taken, that gets rid of the experiments done on it. So Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver would have never been created, which would have meant that there's the potential of not being able to stop Ultron because they wouldn't have had Vision helping out. Vision would never have been created, and so Ultron could have potentially taken over the world, or at the very least still been around, which would have been a threat that they'd have to deal with for a long period of time. They would have also had, because of that, they probably wouldn't, I don't know, they would still have the Sokovia Accords because Ultron still destroyed the world, destroyed a country, but I don't think it would have been as detrimental because it wouldn't have been as many against it. So they would have probably all joined together. Interesting. So that's another one. So that's 4 of them down. So then we have the Time Stone. Now the Time Stone is a very difficult one to kind of hammer down because the Time Stone is the power for the Sorcerer Supreme. So with the Ancient One no longer having it, no longer being able to teach Doctor Strange fully of what needs to be done, Doctor Strange wouldn't have been as powerful. Potentially not even join up because. Oh no, I think he still would have joined. If everything else continued the same. Um, oh no, Doctor Strange wouldn't because the Time Stone no longer existed, so they wouldn't have been able to take it. But did they want it? I don't think they want. No, they did want the Time Stone. They did want the Time Stone. Um, so without it, Dormammu wouldn't have really cared about Earth or would have been able to take it over as like he wanted to. So because of that, that would have caused a problem. Doctor Strange wouldn't have become as powerful, and that would have caused a lot of Infinity War and Endgame to not have happened because he wouldn't have known what to do. Oh yeah, so that would have sucked. And also, he wouldn't have helped out in Ragnarok because he wouldn't have been as powerful and potentially not been the Sorcerer Supreme because it would have still potentially been the Ancient One. Wow. Deep. So then we have the Tesseract. Now, the Tesseract, we already know what happened with Loki. But the Tesseract was taken again, specifically in the 60s or 70s. I think it was the 70s, where they also took Pym particles. So the reason why this is a little bit far-fetched for me is because what would happen then? Well, the government wouldn't have experimented on the Tesseract, which would have meant they wouldn't have created any powerful weapons, which would have mean that Captain Marvel would never have existed. So Captain Marvel would never have existed. That means that Carol Danvers would have been just Carol Danvers. Nick Fury wouldn't have become as powerful in the SHIELD because of that, I would imagine, because of that mission. Minus that mission, I should say. We would have then had a weaker SHIELD. We also would have had weaker technology to begin with, in the fact that they wouldn't have had as much ability to do the ability to create weapons because they didn't have the Tesseract. And they also wouldn't have had the knowledge of what it 100% did. The Pym particles missing, at worst, I would imagine he would have fired his assistant. I mean, I can't imagine much more than that because he would have been able to still make more Pym particles. But yeah, that's all I could think of for this round. I mean, I know there's definitely more I wanted to come up with, but I think 10 is a perfect number to do for this one, and then wait until after season 1 and then talk about another 10 I'd like to see, just to have a better idea on what they're putting in there so I don't copy it or say what's going to happen in the future. So, as always, if you like the content you see, please like and subscribe below, and also tell me what ifs you want to see in the comments. I'd love to hear what you have to say. I know we're getting closer and closer to the end of July, which means the 30-day challenge is almost done, but I still got a lot of videos to make. So for now, this is Beast the Eel signing out. Have a good night.